Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real, heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. This is one of those stories that lingers in your chest long after you hear it, the kind that makes you question how someone could betray the person carrying their child. Riley is 33 years old and lives in a quiet town just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. She's a mother of one, with another on the way. 7 months pregnant to be exact, but at 5 months, while she was hospitalized with pneumonia, she found out something that crushed her. Her husband, Corey, 36, had been cheating on her the entire time. She had just shared a post about her mother's health, hoping to let go of some of the emotional weight, but what she really needed was to say it all. Everything that had been buried under months of heartache. Corey, who was adopted, had always kept in contact with both his adoptive and biological families. So when the truth came out, Riley didn't hold back. She told everyone, his adoptive parents, his biological parents, her own family, their friends, and even his friends. That's when the pieces started falling into place. Riley learned that Corey had cheated on every girlfriend he'd ever had, every single one. She reached out to 2 of them, and to her surprise, they welcomed her. They told her they'd been lied to too. Corey had claimed he wasn't in contact with any of them. He had told Riley the same. But those lies came crashing down after his adoptive mother passed away. Riley's name was in the obituary. She was the daughter-in-law. That's when the exes learned she even existed. Now, Corey says she's the one who ruined his life. He says she destroyed everything. But in truth, he's just hiding, dodging calls, ignoring texts, even from his own family. When her mother confronted him, he claimed he'd spoken to a divorce attorney and that Riley made him feel guilty for being unhappy, but none of that ever happened. She had asked him directly in the hospital as she struggled to breathe if he was cheating. He swore on his mother's grave that he wasn't, but it was all a lie. There's so much Riley still can't understand. How someone can destroy the person they built a life with. How Corey could want the image of a perfect family, a wife, 2 kids, a cozy home, and still keep another woman in the shadows. He was never planning to leave Riley. She was supposed to stay in place while he lived a double life. And now, when Riley's divorce lawyer reaches out, Corey doesn't even respond. He claimed to want the divorce, claimed he was unhappy for months, claimed he'd seen a lawyer, but now he's too busy to finalize what he said he wanted. When Riley found out about the affair, she asked him to leave. That's when he finally said it, that he'd been unhappy, that he didn't know how to tell her, so he cheated instead. He'd wanted this child, the baby she's now carrying. She didn't. She had wanted to wait 2 more years, but Corey insisted. And now that he's gone, he says it's her choice, that she can have full custody. Like he's washing his hands of the whole thing. What made it even twisted was that the woman Corey cheated with was also in a relationship. Riley told that man, because he deserved to know. And somehow that became her fault. Corey now says that because she ruined his new life, he no longer owes her an apology. He doesn't regret it. He's not sorry. All he can say is, "I've accepted what I've done." He can't even speak the words, "I cheated." Riley says she wants him to suffer the way she has, to feel just an ounce of the pain he's caused. But she knows he doesn't. In his mind, she's the villain for exposing him. In his version of the story, she betrayed him, not the other way around. He blocks every number, avoids every question, because he knows she has the proof. Screenshots, messages, timelines, everything. And so, he says nothing. He hides, clinging to the lie that silence makes him innocent. Now, Riley is a single mom to her son, with another child on the way. She posted in the comments that part of her knew if she didn't come forward when she did, he would have twisted it all, made it her fault, played the victim. But now, even his family tells her never to take him back. And that, at least, is something, a reminder that she's not alone in this. She's holding on, even through the worst of it. But she still can't understand how someone who swore they loved her could be capable of this much cruelty. When Riley first messaged Corey's affair partner, now ex, she didn't respond for 2 days. Riley had half expected that. The silence felt familiar by now. But when she finally did reply, her message was cruel in its detachment. She said, "Corey told me he's divorcing you, and that the baby you're carrying isn't even his." Riley felt her breath catch. It wasn't just the lie that hurt, it was how easily it rolled off someone else's tongue. How casually her child's existence could be dismissed as if he were just collateral damage in Corey's mess. The more Riley spoke with others, the more she realized just how often Corey had done this. The cheating, the lying, the rewriting of history. One person called him a narcissist. Another called him dangerous. Most said the same thing. He gets what he deserves. About 7 months later, Riley came back to update her post. It wasn't a grand update, she said, but just something small. But her words carried a quiet strength. "You don't have to be fully healed for life to start getting better," she wrote. And somehow it had. She'd received a raise at work and was set to be promoted after the new year. She would be managing her own store soon. That meant another raise, more responsibility, more pride. It felt like something was finally hers again. She'd been going out more, too. Concerts, hockey games. It wasn't about being social, not really. It was about proving to herself that she could still have joy, that her life wasn't stuck in the ruins of what Corey left behind. Her second son was born in October, a quiet birth, without Corey there. In January, Riley began eating healthier. She'd lost 20 pounds, not just in body, but in weight she had carried in her heart. And unexpectedly, she started seeing someone. They weren't official. They never even had the talk. But over time, they both just stopped seeing other people. It wasn't dramatic. It just happened. And he made her smile. That felt like a miracle. Still, reminders of Corey found her in the strangest places. One day, she visited the same dealership where they'd gotten their cars. She broke down crying after finding out Corey had been telling people there that she was abusive, that she had cheated. The staff at the dealership, visibly uncomfortable, offered her a free oil change out of sympathy. Riley showed them the evidence, the messages, the receipts. They believed her, and for once, she didn't have to argue for her own truth. It was why she had saved everything. Screenshots, emails, every little piece of evidence. She always knew he'd try to twist the story. He was predictable like that. The divorce was finalized in January. The judge signed the decree. Official. Done. And Riley had been no contact since June of the year before. But then, Corey's affair partner, now ex, messaged Riley on Thanksgiving. She said she had left him, said she was sorry. Riley didn't respond right away. She wasn't ready. But weeks later, she did. That's when she learned that Corey had been fired from 3 different jobs since she'd left him, that his car was under a repossession order, that his relationship had fallen apart too. She suspected he was seeing someone new. She even thought she knew who it was. A part of her wanted to warn the woman, but another part, the part that had grown weary and wise, told her to let it go. She didn't want to give Corey a reason to reach out. She didn't want to open a door she had fought so hard to close. He had tried once messaging Riley's mother after seeing a post in a Toxic Men Facebook group. He assumed she'd written it. But even then, he didn't ask about the baby, never asked how his son was doing, never asked to see him. Corey's entire family was still blocked. But Riley, she was still close with his grandmother, who called every week just to talk. Her former aunt-in-law and sister-in-law were planning to come to her older son's birthday, so he could see his cousins, so she could see people who still saw her. In truth, Riley was doing okay, and Corey was not. But she wasn't rushing into anything. She wasn't calling the man she was seeing her boyfriend. Not yet. She was still anxious, still second-guessing herself, still waking up sometimes with that sick feeling that something might go wrong. She didn't fully trust her own instincts, but things were moving, slowly. She was looking forward to healing even if she wasn't sure when it would happen. The only unresolved piece was child support. Corey hadn't paid a dime, not a cent from what the court had ordered, so they would be going back to court. Again, and who knew what kind of mess that would bring. Still, she ended her post with hope. If anyone out there was trapped in a situation like hers, she said, she hoped they'd find the strength to leave, to stay gone, because no one who truly loves you will ever make you feel this broken. Riley never thought a signature on a piece of paper could feel so heavy or so freeing. When the judge officially signed off on the divorce, she felt a flicker of joy, rare and raw, that she hadn't felt in what felt like years. She said there were few moments in her life that could compare. Still, the joy was tangled up with grief. She was doing well, yes, but not without cost. Emotionally, she felt stretched thin. Every day still carried the echoes of betrayal, the reminders of all that was lost, the reality of raising 2 children alone. But she was moving forward, slowly, quietly. The hardest part, people told her, was over, but Riley wasn't sure she believed that. Healing wasn't linear, and nothing about this was easy, not with a newborn, not with the looming possibility of going back to court over unpaid child support. She often found herself wondering, how did someone like Corey even have the energy to cheat so often, to juggle multiple affairs, multiple lies? Who had time for that? Who had space in their heart to keep hurting people, one after another, just to chase something new? She never got answers, only silence, only absence. And while Riley's story came to a quiet pause for now, someone else's story, just as sad in its own way, was unfolding not far from her own. Ethan is 48 years old. He's been married to his wife Melissa for 15 years. They live in a sleepy suburb just outside of Boulder, Colorado. He works in IT support and spends most of his days in solitude, at home, at work, in his own head. They had a fight recently, a bad one. Melissa told him she felt like he didn't participate in the relationship anymore, that he never planned dates, never made suggestions, never took the lead on anything fun or meaningful. Ethan, feeling blindsided, told her, "If you want to do something, just ask me." He thought he was being reasonable, but Melissa broke. She yelled, told him she was tired of carrying everything, the emotional weight, the household decisions, the social planning, that asking for attention shouldn't feel like begging, that she didn't want to add date night manager to her already full plate. Ethan admitted in his post that her words hit hard, especially when she added, "Why don't you ask your non-existent friends how they treat their wives? Oh wait, you don't have any, because you're boring." That one stuck. Ethan didn't really have any friends. A few co-workers he spoke to here and there, sure, but no one he called on weekends, no one he confided in. He never thought that was a problem. To him, it meant he was devoted, that his time was focused on home, on Melissa, on family. Wasn't that a good thing? But now he wasn't so sure. He edited his post later to say that, in hindsight, he hadn't really heard what Melissa was trying to say, not for years. She'd been telling him, in words and in silences, that she felt alone, that she felt like he had checked out emotionally. And when he told her, "Just ask," what she heard wasn't kindness, it was dismissal. He realized, too, late, that it wasn't really about friends or hobbies or even about planning dates. It was about effort, about showing up in a relationship not just physically, but emotionally, about being a participant in love, not just a presence. Ethan admitted that over time,
he'd stopped trying, stopped reaching out to old friends, let hobbies fall by the wayside, let the world shrink around him until Melissa was the only person in it. And now, even she was starting to fade. Commenters were blunt. Your marriage won't survive this unless you stop playing helpless and start changing. Ethan agreed. He said it hit him like a punch, but he needed it. He'd always thought he was doing okay, that life was just fine. But fine had become numb. When he really looked back, he could see the cracks, the moments Melissa had asked for more and he hadn't listened, the quiet disappointments that stacked up like bricks, the way she had slowly stopped sharing things with him, stopped laughing as much. He realized that by holding everything in, by not sharing when he was upset or tired or stressed, he wasn't protecting her, he was walling her out. He wasn't just failing to give love, he was making it impossible to receive it too. There wasn't cheating in Ethan's story, no dramatic betrayal, no secret affair. But sometimes the saddest endings come not from cruelty, but from neglect. And Ethan was starting to realize that love, left unattended, doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just fades, quietly, until one day you look up and realize the person across from you feels like a stranger, and you wonder how long they've been drifting away and how long you've been too still to notice. Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table that night, the weight of silence pressing on him like a second skin. He thought about all the people he used to know, old college friends, co-workers from previous jobs, people who had once reached out, messaged, invited, and how one by one he let the threads go slack. He never called back, never followed up, never made the effort. And now there was no one left on the other end. He started to realize that Melissa had been saying the same thing for years, not always in words, but in subtle pleas, tired glances, quiet resignations. She had been asking for connection, and he had answered with distance. Ethan admitted in a follow-up post that he could have done better, that he didn't need some online strangers to tell him to wake up, but that maybe, just maybe, he needed someone to say it in a way he couldn't ignore. He'd always thought he was self-aware, but the truth was, he had been coasting through life in a fog, and it took this moment to snap him out of it. He wrote, "I should have seen it. I should have heard her. I should have done something. Anything." It reminded me of something that hits too close for many of us. How easy it is to retreat into ourselves when life becomes too loud or too heavy. How sometimes shutting down feels safer than reaching out. But that quiet, that comfort in silence can slowly become a cage. And it's only when someone shakes the bars that we realize how trapped we've become. Ethan continued with an update. After posting and reading every response, some kind, some painfully honest, he decided to plan something, anything, for Melissa. A simple night out. He didn't know what she'd want, so he picked something small, a quiet dinner at a place she liked. She didn't care about the food, or the place. She cried because he'd tried. That's all she'd wanted. Later that evening, Ethan showed her the post, all of it, the comments, the raw confessions, the shame. Melissa read for nearly an hour. Then she looked up and said they needed couples counseling. Ethan agreed, even though he'd said no in the past. This time, he said yes, and she cried again. They booked an appointment the following Tuesday. During the session, Ethan finally began to put into words what had been sitting in his chest for years: the stress from work, the numbness, the lack of joy in anything he used to love, and how he never told her. He thought he was protecting her by keeping it all in. The counselor gently told him that by staying silent, he wasn't protecting Melissa. He was isolating himself, and worse, shutting her out. Melissa admitted she could tell something was wrong. She said it felt like watching someone she loved slowly wither, like he was disappearing a little more each day, and she didn't know how to stop it. She had tried talking, reaching, fighting, but it felt like yelling into a void. He didn't answer, didn't react, didn't change. The counselor explained how emotional withdrawal, especially when paired with apathy, is a strong indicator of depression. Ethan said he hadn't known. He always thought depression meant feeling sad. But what he felt wasn't sadness, it was nothing. An absence of care, of interest, of life. A grayness that coated everything. That day, Melissa said her biggest fear wasn't that Ethan had fallen out of love, but that he had already left in every way that mattered. They also touched on the unseen weight Melissa carried, the mental load of the household. She said she didn't think Ethan was lazy. In fact, she worried he took on too much, but never stopped to enjoy anything. He didn't laugh, didn't relax, didn't live. The next day, Ethan had a one-on-one session with an online therapist. He didn't love it. Being vulnerable with a stranger wasn't easy, but it shook something loose. The therapist pointed out his original post read like a flashing neon sign of untreated depression. She asked him about hobbies he used to love, friendships he'd let fade, interests that had disappeared over time. She urged him to reach out, to build connections outside of his marriage, to find small ways to reconnect with the world. But the moment that cut deepest was when she said, "Imagine how much it must have hurt your wife to know you were drowning, and yet you never told her, never let her in. That's not protecting her, that's breaking her slowly." They talked about how boys are often taught never to ask for help, that being strong means being silent, that needing anything is weakness. Ethan realized those lessons had followed him his whole life, and they were killing his marriage. She called it toxic masculinity. He called it all he'd ever known. Now Ethan is trying to pick up the pieces. He's thinking about painting again, maybe joining a hiking group. He's not sure yet, but for the first time in years, he's doing something. Not just for Melissa, for himself. Because life, even when quiet, should still be lived. Ethan sat with the words still echoing in his head days later. You need balance in your life. It can't just be your wife and your work. The therapist had said it so plainly, so gently, but it landed like a weight. He'd never thought of his life as imbalanced, just simplified, clean. Work, home, sleep, repeat. But in that stripped-down version of life, he'd let go of the color, the joy, the parts of himself that once made him more than just a husband or a provider. It was hard to hear, but maybe harder to accept, that he needed something for himself, that having his own experiences, his own joy, would actually strengthen the bond he shared with Melissa, not threaten it. Still, Ethan wasn't entirely sold on therapy. He admitted as much in his update. The counselor they met with for couple sessions was kind, but not quite the right fit. He was thinking of asking for a referral next time, which the clinic had offered during their first visit. Maybe a fresh voice would help him face what he now realized had been growing in the background of his life for too long: depression. His wife had faced it, his therapist had, but Ethan had always thought it looked a certain way: crying, sadness, darkness. His days were quiet, dull, uneventful, but not sad, not at first. So he assumed he was fine. Tired maybe, just busy. But now he knew. Apathy was a symptom too. And apathy was a feeling he knew all too well. He stopped painting, stopped going on walks, stopped calling his brother, stopped feeling like himself. Looking back, Ethan realized how many times Melissa had tried to tell him something was wrong, not just with them, but with him. She hadn't always used direct words. Sometimes it was in the way she sighed when he gave another empty answer. Sometimes it was in the way she looked at him during dinner, like she was searching for someone who used to sit across from her. He hadn't heard it then, but now he couldn't unhear it. He wrote, "I used to think I was protecting her by keeping everything to myself, but I see it now. I wasn't protecting her at all. I was shutting her out." And that realization, that truth, broke him open. Because in trying to spare Melissa from her own struggles, he ended up making her feel alone, like he didn't trust her, like he didn't need her. And that kind of emotional starvation can be as damaging as any fight, any betrayal. The therapist told him something that stuck. Admitting you're not okay is the first step. Telling your partner what you feel, even if it's just confusion or numbness, is the doorway back to intimacy. Ethan wasn't sure he had it all figured out. He said in his update, "Maybe I'm missing things. Maybe some of what I'm writing doesn't track. But I know this. If I hadn't come here and posted, if strangers hadn't shaken me awake, I think my marriage would have ended without me even seeing it coming."
He thanked everyone who responded, even the ones who were blunt, especially them. He admitted he wasn't great at expressing emotion, but that he felt more grateful than he could put into words. One commenter wrote, "Ethan, I'm crying happy tears. You're doing the hard work, getting out of depression, building connection, growing. It's a journey, but you're walking it now." And Ethan replied, "It does feel like I'm finally moving after standing still for years. I'm not sure what's ahead, but I'm not afraid anymore, and that's new." Another commenter said, half jokingly, "You're lucky she didn't leave. I would've." Ethan didn't bristle at that. He agreed. He wrote, "She told me that if she hadn't sensed something deeper going on, something beyond just laziness or apathy, she would have left, and honestly, I wouldn't have blamed her." He said they still had a lot of work to do, that he still had miles to go, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just surviving, he was trying. Some readers debated the fairness of Melissa's harsh words, especially the comment about his non-existent friends. One said it felt cruel, considering he was clearly depressed. But the truth is, depression doesn't always come with a label. Most people don't recognize it until the damage has already been done. For Ethan, it took losing the sound of his wife's laughter and the warmth in their home before he saw the signs, before he could name what was swallowing him. He ended his post quietly. "I want to believe we can find each other again, that I can find myself again. And if anyone reading this feels stuck or numb or just tired, please talk to someone. Even if it's just a comment, even if it's just one sentence, you might not know how much you need to be heard until someone finally listens." Ethan still remembers the words, the way Melissa, in a moment of exhaustion and anger, had snapped, "Ask your non-existent friends how they treat their wives. Oh, right, you don't have any, because you're boring." It wasn't just the words, it was the sting behind them, the confirmation of what he feared, that he'd become invisible even in the eyes of the person he loved most. He knew she didn't mean it, not like that. People say awful things when they're hurting, but it echoed louder than anything else that night. Not because it was cruel, but because a part of him believed it. That maybe he had become dull, small, easy to forget. But that moment, painful as it was, cracked something open. It forced him to look inward, to face what he'd ignored for too long. Now, at 48, in the quiet outskirts of Boulder, Colorado, Ethan is slowly rebuilding. He's learning to open up, to feel again. And Melissa, 46, is still there. Tired, wounded, but still holding on. They both are. Their love isn't easy, but it's not over. And sometimes that's enough to keep going. Ethan's story is heartbreakingly familiar. Many people drift into emotional silence without realizing it. Not because they stop loving,
but because they stop showing it. Depression doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like disconnection, stillness, or avoidance. If you feel yourself becoming numb or distant in your relationship, take that as a signal to check in with yourself, not just with your partner. Protecting someone doesn't mean hiding your pain. Real protection comes through honesty and connection. And if you're on the other side, watching someone you love fade, remember to speak from compassion, not just frustration. Invite them back gently. Let them know you see them even when they can't see themselves. That kind of patience can be the thing that saves you both.